Deadliest Catch is classic cozy TV, but these behind-the-scenes stories are anything but comforting. The tragedies of this long-running reality show go a lot deeper than you'd think.
Jake Harris lost his father, Phil, the immensely popular captain of the Cornelia Marie, in January 2010. That loss came during the 6th season of the show, and Jake, who had often struggled with drugs and was even suspected of doing them on the clock, began to fall apart shortly thereafter. First, he was involved in a hit-and-run accident in Seattle. Then, when sharing a ride home from a Washington casino with 3 new acquaintances, he was robbed and beaten within an inch of his life. Later, he was charged with drug possession and grand theft auto in Phoenix while joyriding with another man's wife. In February 2019, after being stopped by park rangers, he led state troopers on a dangerous chase around rural Washington in an RV. When authorities caught him, they found heroin, a stolen shotgun, and a suspended license. Police booked him for DUI, as well as various drug and weapons charges. A number of vessels have been lost to disaster during the filming of Deadliest Catch, including the Big Valley, the Galaxy, the Ocean Challenger, and the Destination. Perhaps most poignant of these is the sinking of the Destination because it was preventable. The disaster was detailed in the 105th episode of the show titled The Mystery of the FV Destination. The Coast Guard found that the Destination was weighed down with roughly 330,000 pounds of ice. The disaster plunged several of the show's stars, including Sig Hansen and Jake Anderson, into mourning. The ship's crew was apparently under a great deal of pressure, having delayed their crabbing efforts to finish up fishing for cod. Had the Destination's captain, Jeff Hathaway, opted to stop on shore and break up some of the ice that had formed in the crab pots, its 6-member crew might have been saved. The crew of the vessels featured on Deadliest Catch have obviously gotten the most attention, but the behind-the-scenes staff of the show have likewise garnered a few headlines. In September 2016, a 22-year-old production manager, Matthew J. Schneider, was charged with using and selling cocaine. He was caught in a large undercover sting launched by Unalaska police. Schneider, who fled to California, can be heard on police recordings saying that his supervisor sometimes purchased large amounts of cocaine to distribute at Deadliest Catch parties, many of which took place in Dutch Harbor, Alaska. The investigation has not roped in any other members of the show's staff. By far, the sadder case is the story of Joe McMahon, a 25-year-old producer who was shot and killed in front of his parents' house in Pasadena, California, in the early hours of July 24, 2015. Neighbors reported hearing shots being fired and a car speeding away. McMahon's body was found in a neighbor's driveway. Police soon found Brandon Rafipor, 24, in a car nearby McMahon's home, dead of what appeared to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Police believe Rafipor, who knew McMahon, was the killer, but a motive in the shooting is unknown. In 2010, Captain Phil Harris succumbed to complications from a stroke captured on camera in Season 6. Then, in 2011, just a year after Harris's passing, Time Bandit deckhand Justin Tennyson passed away at age 33 in an Alaskan hotel. The official cause of death was complications from sleep apnea, but police found evidence of possible hard partying from the previous night. According to his relative Eddie Uwekulani, Tennyson was a family man who cherished his kids and loved the wild, boom-and-bust nature of life as a Bering Sea fisherman. Uwekulani also hinted that the pressures of Deadliest Catch fame might have played a role in Tennyson's demise. I don't know if we're all getting too relaxed or enjoying the movie part, but everybody is watching their health now. Sadly, despite that caution, the death of Tony Lara soon followed. Lara had taken over as skipper aboard the Cornelia Marie following the death of his close friend, Captain Phil Harris. In August 2015, Lara was found dead of a heart attack in Sturgis, South Dakota, where he was participating in a local biker rally. Joshua Tell Warner, a crew member of the fishing vessel Wizard, was arrested in May 2010 after a routine traffic stop. Viewers recognized Warner from his work on the show and alerted authorities to his presence in the Midwest. Wanted for 3 armed bank robberies in Eugene, Oregon, Warner was sentenced to 9.5 years. In a press conference about Warner's arrest, Eugene detective Jeff Donica said Warner was to some extent a victim of his own arrogance, saying, "I don't think you can end up on national TV, make a spectacle of yourself, and not end up getting caught for 3 bank robberies." Warner isn't the only Deadliest Catch star to find himself on the wrong end of the law. The aforementioned Jake Harris, son of Captain Phil Harris, has a rap sheet a mile long, and Sig Hansen, captain of the Northwestern, was arrested in May 2017 in Seattle for spitting on an Uber driver. Unlike Warner, Hansen didn't get jail time for the offense, only probation and an order to enter a treatment facility and stop using alcohol for a year. Meanwhile, Sig Hansen's brother Edgar pleaded guilty to sexual assault in July 2018.
At 2 o'clock in the morning, Kevin lost his footing and fell overboard into the icy black waters of the Bering Sea.
Deadliest Catch was a breakout hit for the Discovery Channel when it debuted in April 2005. Since then, it has garnered 16 Emmys and inspired countless other rough-around-the-edges reality shows like History Channel's Ice Road Truckers and Axemen. Why then would the Discovery Channel decide to sue some of the biggest stars of one of their most popular shows? Because those stars, the Hillstrand brothers, allegedly failed to honor their Deadliest Catch contracts by filming a spin-off called Alaskan Monster Hunt: Hillstranded. In late summer 2010, the Discovery Channel sued Jonathan and Andy Hillstrand for $3 million, claiming they skipped photo shoots and interviews to work on Hillstranded. The brothers were famous for their hard work and antics aboard the Time Bandit, skippered by Sig Hansen. All three men quit the show in 2010 to protest the lawsuit. A month later, the channel settled with the Hillstrands and Hansen, and the fishermen agreed to return for the next season. But some damage had undoubtedly been done. In 2013, another member of their Time Bandit crew, David Beaver Zielinski, was injured when a firework he was holding exploded in his hand. According to Zielinski, who sued the Hillstrand brothers for $2.7 million, he'd been ordered by Andy Hillstrand to shoot the firework at a rival boat, the Cape Caution. The firework shattered Zielinski's hand and forearm, effectively ending his career as a commercial crabber. During the 2017 trial, Zielinski claimed that Jonathan Hillstrand told him to lie about the cause of his injuries in order to protect himself and his brother, and that members of the Time Bandit crew and the Discovery Channel hid or destroyed evidence. Zielinski was eventually awarded $1.4 million in damages. The Deadliest Catch's newest foe is climate change, which is depleting the supply of all Bering Sea crab species, forcing the fishermen further and further from shore. The dire nature of this problem first became clear in season 13, when producers and talent alike began to wonder if there would be any action to film. In order to keep crabbers from overfishing, the Alaskan Department of Fish and Game has created a quota system based on an annual survey of the overall health of the crab population. As of 2017, the quota had to be cut in half, meaning Deadliest Catch captains like Sig Hansen could only count on half the income they were used to. Despite the grim realities, Hansen has said that he and his fellow fishermen were determined to press on. The fleet is going to need to go further and deeper. Nobody is going to take away a fisherman's way of life. I can guarantee you that this fleet will not quit, but we're always fearful that this will be our last year. Fishing for Alaskan king crab in the Bering Sea is not actually as dangerous as it gets. That dubious honor goes to Dungeness crab fishing, a less regulated, more reckless profession, and the inspiration behind the Discovery Channel spin-off Deadliest Catch, Dungeon Cove. Dungeon Cove follows 4 families of fishermen who work off the coast of Newport, Oregon, known to many as the Graveyard of the Pacific. Dungeon Cove premiered in September 2016, and already one man has sued his captain for negligence, claiming a lack of training and safety protocol led to his losing full use of one arm. The plaintiff, Nolan Dean, testified that he got his arm caught in a hydraulic lift and was then thrown overboard. The captain in the suit is named Gary the Ripper Ripka, which seems like a pretty bad stroke of luck.
It wasn't until more than a year after crew member Todd Kachutin's death that Discovery UK shared more footage of the circumstances surrounding the fatal accident. In Season 17, the captains of Deadliest Catch talked about a crew member on the Patricia Lee who was in desperate need of medical attention. Eventually, Sig Hansen shared the terrifying circumstances that necessitated the call. Kachutin had been hit by a sliding crab pot, which weighed in at somewhere around 800 pounds. Kachutin later died on board the ship as a result of his injuries. According to his obituary, he was lauded for his sense of humor, his friendly and outgoing personality, and the dangerous Bering Sea was described as always being a special place to him. He was survived by both his parents, his sister, and his brother. Unsurprisingly, his death was taken hard by the crew, who described his untimely passing as the tragic loss of yet another friend. The ocean is breathtaking in beauty, but as the cast of Deadliest Catch know all too well, it's also incredibly unpredictable and wildly dangerous. Still, sometimes no amount of care and caution can prevent life-threatening accidents, like the one that happened to Francis Katungan on board the Patricia Lee. In an episode that aired on April 26, 2022, the ship was hit by a rogue wave. The blow to the ship loosened a crab pot, and Katungan was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
I recovered and looked over, and he was pinned in between the upright pots and the anchor.
The accident was so bad that even the show's producer rushed in to help. Katungan was moved inside, and Captain Rip Carlton quickly came to the conclusion that he had probably broken his hip and pelvis. Carlton radioed for help, and in the following 16 hours of traveling to meet up with the U.S. Coast Guard, the waters and the weather only got worse. Katungan was lifted onto a helicopter in the middle of an Arctic storm, another reminder of just how dangerous the job can turn in a split second. Captain Rip Carlton and the crew of the Patricia Lee have dealt with a string of tragedies, and Katungan's accident and Kachutin's death were far from the end of them. After Katungan was taken off the boat in the middle of an Arctic storm, the Patricia Lee was delayed in going back out onto the water. After adding another deckhand named Devin Davis, they headed back out. Once everyone was on board, the captain took a moment to highlight the importance of safety to his crew.
Devin, it's your first time on the boat. Don't get hurt.
Sadly, the trip quickly turned into a nightmare when Davis collapsed in an accident that was not recorded. Another crew member radioed the captain in a panic, saying that Davis had taken a blow to the head, knocking him unconscious and causing him to spit blood. Exactly what had happened was immediately unclear, and the episode wrapped with Carlton saying he had no idea what was going to happen. The following episode showed that Davis regained consciousness, though yet another crew member sustained an ankle injury shortly thereafter, leaving the crew even more shorthanded. Luckily, by the end of the episode, Davis was back on his feet and working the deck with his crewmates, though Carlton made it clear there was little time for celebration, given how behind schedule they were.
Never thought it'd feel good to be sorting fish heads again.
A veteran of Deadliest Catch, Nick Mavar was featured on the show from its first season in 2005 all the way through to season 17. During his time on Deadliest Catch, Mavar worked as a deckhand on the fishing boat FV Northwestern and was no stranger to the dangers of his profession. In one 2011 episode, with a storm raging, Mavar's nose was broken by a hook that swung into his face. Another more serious incident in late 2020 caused his departure from the show when his appendix burst aboard the Northwestern. As if that was not serious enough, a cancerous tumor was also discovered while Mavar was being treated for the burst appendix. While Mavar recovered and was successfully treated for both medical issues, he would later sue the owners of the Northwestern for inadequate medical contingencies. Sadly, despite these and the many other trials Mavar faced in his notoriously dangerous career of commercial sea fishing, it was on land, in a boatyard, where Mavar had a heart attack and died in June 2024. His nephew and castmate, Jake Anderson, spoke to Mavar's dedication to their craft with the New York Times, calling his uncle a fisherman through and through. Captained by Jake Anderson since 2015, the FV Saga was a regular feature on Deadliest Catch. In 2020, viewers got to watch Ross Jones, a young deckhand seeking to make a name for himself, work among the vessel's fearless crew for 2 episodes.
This is all new for me, first open season.
While the Greenhorn was only a crew member on the Saga for a relatively short while, later moving on to at least 2 other ships as a deckhand, he reportedly left his mark as an affable character. Sadly, Jones passed away in June 2022. Details are sparse on the cause of Jones's untimely death, with the popular Facebook fan page for Deadliest Catch citing respect and privacy for the fisherman's partner and young son, who had turned 2 years old shortly before Jones' passing. The announcement was received with an outpouring of grief and condolences, and Captain Jake Anderson contributed with a post on Instagram, alluding to Jones's sense of humor and commemorating his hard work. In August 2023, the longtime star of Deadliest Catch, Captain Jake Anderson, found himself without the most essential tool for open sea fishing, a boat. After 18 years of working his way to the top of his profession and facing his fair share of adversity in the process, Anderson's future was upended with a locked chain and a repossession note hanging from his fishing vessel, the FV Saga. To at least partially understand why Anderson ended up in this predicament, we need to wind the clock back a couple of years. In 2021, due to declining crab populations, the red king crab season in Alaska was canceled, and the same occurred in 2022. Naturally, this placed fishermen under considerable financial strain, and the reopening of the king crab fisheries in 2023 was expected to see fewer boats as a result. Anderson had also hinted that his reliance on his business partner to handle the finances may have compounded the problem, saying in an interview with TV Insider, "Just before I was going to go red crab fishing, I found out my partner, with all due respect with the legal things going on, we don't know what he did. I lost my boat. Fortunately, Anderson had a helping hand from his former mentor and co-star, Captain Sig Hansen. Hansen offered him a place on his own boat, the FB Northwestern. The two may have had a fraught working relationship in the past, but Anderson said that this time things would be different, explaining, "Without my boat, I'm not a threat to him anymore. I can only be an asset." Of all the boats featured on Discovery Channel's Deadliest Catch, the Cornelia Marie is one of the most beloved for having been the site of much sweat, blood, and toil since the earliest seasons of the show. Captained by Phil Harris from 2005 until his tragic death in 2010, the Cornelia Marie's helm was passed to his sons, Jake and Josh Harris, until Josh partnered with Casey McManus to purchase the boat. However, years later, the partnership was on course for an unexpected and shocking turn of events, which would end both McManus and Josh's tenure on Deadliest Catch, as well as the rugged Cornelia Marie's. According to facts, in September 2022, reports emerged of a sexual assault allegedly committed by Josh against a minor, which took place in 1998. Josh was reportedly a minor himself at the time he was charged, and OK reports he ultimately pleaded guilty to lesser charges of assault and immoral communication with a minor, with a sentence of 9 months and a psychological evaluation. These allegations about Josh's past caused a media firestorm, and the Discovery Channel was quick to act. Within a few weeks, it was announced that Josh had been dropped from Deadliest Catch, and he was not the only one to experience the fallout. McManus was also axed, along with the Cornelia Marie. McManus moved on to operating tugboats and was philosophical about his exit from Deadliest Catch, writing on X, formerly known as Twitter, "Discovery did not renew contracts with the boat, nor Josh nor I. It was a bummer deal, but there's no crab to catch anyways." Even so, a scandal like this was surely not on the career fisherman's bingo card. In 2017, it was reported that Sig Hansen was being sued by his estranged daughter, Melissa Ekstrom, after she claimed she was sexually abused by her father when she was a toddler. According to the Seattle Times, Hansen and his daughter's mother, Lisa Ekstrom, divorced in 1992. At the time, the accusations had also surfaced, but the judge in the case found that the abuse charges were unfounded and that Hansen was innocent. Fast forward to 2017, and Ekstrom's attorneys were bringing the case to court again, based on the fact that she hadn't been able to testify the first time. Meanwhile, Hansen made it clear what he thought of the whole thing, saying, "This is nothing more than an old-fashioned shakedown. It's a completely frivolous lawsuit full of lies that my ex-wife made up to take away my daughter, and still uses to try to extort money from me. It's blackmail." The following year, the Washington State Court of Appeals ruled that a civil trial could move forward. No further details on the progression of a civil trial have been made public, and Hansen continues to deny the charges.
The rough and challenging waters of the Bering Sea can even extend into the cannery harbors to which the crabbers deliver their product. During the season 17 episode, The Ultimate Price, the Summer Bay had to deal with one of the worst harbors in the entire sea. It is near the end of the season, and the Summer Bay is headed for one of the few canneries still open, though this one is notorious for having an incredibly dangerous harbor. Captain Wild Bill Witrowski tries to maneuver his vessel into the port, but he gets caught in the surf zone, and the massive swells keep turning his boat around, prompting the captain to call his crew inside. At multiple points, the Summer Bay is almost completely submerged, with one giant wave just about flipping the vessel upside down and pouring water into the wheelhouse. The captain later remarked that it was one of the closest calls of his career, and even the camera crew profusely thanked him for saving their lives. It was a harrowing ending to a season that had already seen tragedy strike the crew of the Summer Bay, with the ship's 33-year-old deck boss, Nick McGlashan, dying in December 2020. In every episode of Deadliest Catch, crab fishing vessels have to travel to the most remote parts of the Bering Sea in order to catch crab. While this allows them access to some of the freshest and best-tasting seafood, it also leaves them totally cut off from hospitals and doctors, sometimes by hundreds of miles. While crews will typically have at least one medically certified individual on board, these professionals are pretty limited in what they can do. During the Season 9 finale episode, The Final Battle, deckhand Brandon Jaime gets several of his fingers caught in a bait chopper while at sea. With Jaime bleeding heavily, with no medical facilities on the ship, the captain calls in the Coast Guard for an airlift rescue. However, the weather is so poor at first that the Coast Guard is initially unable to rescue the injured crewman. The Coast Guard has to wait for a break in the storm to finally airlift Jaime off the boat, taking him to the closest hospital where he's briefly treated before being flown to a specialist on the mainland. For many fishermen, the season does not end until they can finally return to their home and get a good night's sleep in their own bed. As Deadliest Catch star Captain Sig Hansen showed in the season 12 finale, even heading back to port can be deadly. As the Northwestern is ending its season, Hansen starts to experience serious chest and arm pains. He is unsure of exactly what is going on, even after the camera crew starts to notice he is experiencing discomfort, and he goes so far as to claim that he isn't dying. Hansen is immediately rushed to the hospital when the Northwestern makes it to port, and his doctor reveals the terrifying truth. Hansen wasn't experiencing just any heart attack, but one commonly known as a widowmaker. According to the Cleveland Clinic, it's called the widowmaker due to its fast fatal potential, as 50% of the heart's blood supply is immediately compromised. Hansen was incredibly lucky that his heart attack happened when he was already headed to port, or things could have ended much worse. His doctor made it clear how close he came to dying. Going overboard on Deadliest Catch doesn't only include the risk of getting crushed by the boat, but drowning, getting attacked by animals, and succumbing to hypothermia. During the appropriately titled Season 14 episode Greenhorn Overboard, Summer Bay Greenhorn Spencer Moore is working hard to pull in some buoys during a severe storm, when one of them pulls Moore overboard and into the Bering Sea. While the crew manages to pull Moore on board and save his life, he spends several moments in the freezing waters as they struggle to pull him up. This shock to his system renders Moore motionless after getting back on the deck, though he does eventually manage to make his way inside. He profusely thanks his shipmates for saving his life and seems to be physically okay. But it's hard to imagine just how terrifying the moment was, with Moore being incredibly lucky that his crewmates were able to act so quickly and efficiently. In order for fishermen to do their jobs, with most Deadliest Catch crews only consisting of 4 deckhands, they have to utilize a lot of hydraulic and mechanized equipment to catch, sort, and store thousands of pounds of crab. Most of the time, the equipment helps the crabbers accomplish their job much more easily, but that's not always the case. During the Season 10 episode Blonde Ambition, a moving hydraulic table traps wizard deckhand Roger Schlosstein between the pot and the table. Immediately, Schlosstein starts screaming, collapsing to the deck as soon as the table moves away. His back injury appears so severe that Keith Colburn, the Wizards' captain, comes down to check on him. Without immediate access to a hospital, Schlosstein is forced to get by with only rudimentary pain meds. The label Greenhorn on Deadliest Catch is meant for the rookie deckhands who are in their first season of crab fishing. Greenhorns can be young or old, and they can be subjected to some pretty severe ridicule from the rest of the crew. Veteran crabbers who have been in the industry for years or even decades, while they have to learn the dangerous and demanding ropes of crab fishing. During the Season 10 episode Skipper Harris in Training, Greenhorn Miles Johnson learns just how dangerous life at sea can be while working on the Cape Caution. As he's hauling in full crab pots at night, he takes an unexpected hit directly into his face. Johnson is knocked over, his face a bloody mess. Luckily, one of the other crew members is also a registered EMT, and he is able to dispense some quick care to stop the bleeding. However, Captain Wild Bill was still worried about the possibility of a concussion, so he had Johnson monitored throughout the night. Thankfully, Johnson only suffered a broken nose. On Deadliest Catch, things can go from bad to worse very quickly, such as a horrifying bout of dehydration suffered by Wizard Greenhorn Chris Scambler during Season 8. Complaining about a pain in his arm and numbness in his face, Scambler manages to walk off the deck, but collapses, seeing double. As Scambler's body starts to completely shut down, his heart rate skyrockets while his blood pressure drops. Captain Colburn's quick thinking leads to a dramatic mid-sea rescue by the Coast Guard, who in all likelihood saves Scambler's life. Colburn and his crew were rattled by the incident, and Scambler was unable to continue on the vessel for the remainder of the season. It was one of the show's most intense moments, serving as a serious reminder about how dangerous fishing can be in the Bering Sea. Getting the Coast Guard involved for an at-sea rescue happens more often than many might think, especially if you are a crew member on Deadliest Catch. Unfortunately, in the season 18 episode Crushed at Sea, the crew of the Patricia Lee find themselves crabbing during a severe storm when deckhand Francis Katungan gets crushed between two massive crab pots. This severely injures Katungan's back and puts him in immense pain. Worse yet, the Patricia Lee is far out at sea and out of the Coast Guard's 100-mile rescue zone. To save Katungan's life, Captain Rip Carlton races through the storm to get to the outer edge of the rescue zone so the Coast Guard can pick him up. Once the medevac team safely makes it aboard, they have to deal with the delicate issue of Katungan's back, which they cannot risk abruptly moving. When he's finally secured, the Coast Guard is able to lift Katungan off the Patricia Lee. While Katungan survived his injuries, his career as a crabber may be over. One of the most important roles of any ship captain sailing through the Bering Sea is to be attentive and alert. During the Season 3 episode, Cheating Death, the Time Bandit is sailing through rough seas when Captain Hillstrand notices one of the deckhands of a nearby fishing vessel, Josh White, is in a very precarious situation on the side of the ship trying to secure the crab pots. But the moment after Hillstrand loses track of White, he instantly realizes that White has fallen overboard. The Time Bandit is able to pull the drowning White out of the ocean. While he's deep in the early stages of hypothermia, the crew immediately replaces his soaking wet clothes with a thick, warm blanket. White starts thanking and hugging Hillstrand almost as soon as he sees him. Though it came fairly early in the series, this became one of the show's defining moments. It showcased the danger and peril which these commercial fishermen experience on a daily basis, and luckily, it finishes with a happy ending. Since the Bering Sea is massive, most vessels find themselves largely alone when out fishing. Occasionally, ships will see rival fishermen or other vessels in the same area, but it definitely isn't the norm. That made the collision in the Season 17 episode, Russian Dragger, especially alarming. The Wizard is steaming along when another boat cuts in front of them. Unable to stop or maneuver out of the way, Captain Colburn frantically screams over the radio for the other ship to move. But his pleas are to no avail, and the Wizard plows into the other boat, risking the lives of both ships' crews. Thankfully, the Wizard's anchor acted as a crumple zone for the ship and absorbed the brunt of the impact between the two vessels. When the crew determines that the ship is structurally sound, both vessels manage to sail away from the incident. When Jake Anderson takes over for Elliot Neese as the captain of the Saga, things don't quite get off to the best start. During his first voyage in charge, in the Season 11 episode 5-Year Storm, the Saga runs into some rough weather that produces violent waves up to 40 feet tall. At a particularly intense moment, two massive waves plunge the deck underwater and send the deck crew swimming. The crew members could have easily slid into a piece of heavy equipment and been severely injured, or even be swept right off the deck into the freezing ocean. The Saga itself nearly capsizes from the impact, but control of the vessel is regained before anyone gets hurt. However, this doesn't stop the crew from being more than a little upset over what happened. Relief Captain Ray Flershinger claimed that the waves were rogue and he had no way to avoid them or adequately warn the crew. In the end, while no one was seriously injured physically, it was a less than auspicious start for Anderson's captaincy. Imagine for a moment that you are crab fishing on the Bering Sea. It's late at night and the temperatures are sub-zero. Suddenly, you lose all power and the ship is plunged into darkness. To make things worse, a fire breaks out in the engine room and your electrical system is completely fried. That's exactly the situation Captain Sig Hansen and the Northwestern found themselves in during Season 12's Fire at Sea. The fire occurs in the middle of the crew hauling in pots full of crab, and it brings the entire operation to a standstill. After the crew puts the fire out, they realize the electrical system is severely damaged. This puts the lives of the crew and thousands of pounds of crab at risk, as the pumps on the Northwestern are controlled electronically. With the crew nearly 200 miles away from any landmass, this incident could have been fatal. Luckily, they're able to get their 4-cylinder engine working, saving the day and the crab, getting the Northwestern home safely.
TMZ reported on December 28, 2020, that cast member Nick McGlashan had passed away the day before in Nashville, Tennessee. The cause of death had not yet been released, but it was known that McGlashan had struggled for years with alcohol and drug addiction, leading to his suspension from the show in its 13th season when he entered a rehab program. TMZ reported, "It got so bad, he said he was drinking a half-gallon of vodka and shooting up with 1 gram of meth and 2 grams of heroin in a single day." It is unclear whether or not this contributed to his untimely demise at just 33 years old, as he was reportedly trying to get clean and inspire others to do the same. But considering he was in Tennessee and not Alaska, we can infer that it wasn't the deadly ocean-going profession that ended his life. Nick McGlashan came from a long line of crab fishermen. His great-uncle, after whom he was named, was among the first to pioneer the U.S. crab industry in 1947. 2 of his aunts were crabbers, and tragedy struck one of them when her boat sank while out at sea in 1986. McGlashan himself began working as a crabber in the Bering Sea when he was just 13 years old. He started on his father's boat, the FV Westling, and in 2011 he was hired by Captain Wild Bill Wachowski. He would go on to head the crew on Bill's Cape Caution and eventually bought his own boat, the Summer Bay. According to his biography on Discovery Go, McGlashan was known for his witty quips, working through the pain, and not stopping the job until it's done. Captain Bill called him the epitome of a true crabber for his ability to keep a boat running despite all types of mechanical problems, since he had a knack for improvising solutions to whatever issues arose. And when you're out at sea for long periods of time, a lot of problems can suddenly arise. Discovery said in a statement to The Hollywood Reporter, "Our deepest sympathy goes out to Nick's loved ones during this difficult time. Nick came from a long line of crabbers and was known for his great depth of knowledge. He also had a sharp sense of humor even in the most difficult conditions. He will be deeply missed by all those who knew him." As his Discovery Go bio states, drug and alcohol addiction is often and unfortunately part of being a true crabber. McGlashan wrote about his addictions in a 2017 article for Chosen magazine. He wrote, "My life went from Bering Sea badass to full-blown junkie very rapidly. Hidden from me was that passion I had for life. Taken from me was my ability to live. I was at war with my addiction, and it was winning." He said his addictions led him to be lost, broken, and soulless, and living without hope. "All I wanted was to stay loaded, every bit of happiness stripped away by a powerful, cunning, and baffling disease." After overdosing 3 times, McGlashan finally reached out for help in November 2016. He texted a friend an urgent message saying, "I need help." He said that when he finally entered a treatment facility, it was the scariest thing I've ever done, but also the best thing I've ever done. I was broken, hopeless, without love, strength, or honesty, all of which my disease had hidden from me. Being around people in the same boat as he was helped him get sober, and they all learned together how to get by without getting high. It is such a shame that his life came to the tragic end that it did after he did so much work to regain the love and hope that he lost during his addictions.
Had it all and lost it in seconds. I'm thinking, why wouldn't you just quit?
Before he became a professional fisherman and television star, Jake Anderson aspired to be a pro skateboarder. A severe injury precluded that career choice and left Anderson struggling to move forward. He told the Skagit Valley Herald, "I kind of gave up on everything." Anderson began to misuse prescription medication and methamphetamines in his early 20s. After healing from his injury enough to give skateboarding another attempt, he began to take another drug, Adderall. Prescribed as a treatment for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, Anderson believed the pills improved his skateboarding. They didn't, and he became so profoundly addicted that he alienated friends and couldn't secure housing. Anderson would ultimately go unhoused in his hometown of Anacortes, Washington for 2 years. He explained, "There was nowhere to go. I can't express the humiliation one feels at 4 or 5 in the morning, and all you can do is watch yourself walk up and down the streets." Shortly after his 24th birthday, Anderson sought out sobriety with a move to Alaska and a job on a fishing boat. After a relapse, he joined a more formal program and kicked drugs for good. He's reportedly been sober since 2010.
Because I'm an alcoholic myself. You compromise my sobriety.
Anderson joined Deadliest Catch in 2007, right about when he began his career in commercial fishing. He was brought into the business by his uncle, original cast member and former Northwestern deckhand Nick Mavar. Anderson would eventually co-captain that vessel, while Mavar would leave the show in the 2020s after tearing his appendix and being diagnosed with cancer. Anderson's uncle retired from reality TV fishing, but not the industry, operating a salmon fishing business in Bristol Bay, Alaska. In one of the biggest tragedies that have come out about Deadliest Catch, Mavar's body was found on the ground at a boatyard in Naknek, Alaska on June 13, 2024. At a nearby hospital, the doctors declared Mavar dead. The cause of death? A sudden health emergency during an odd accident. Initially reported as natural causes, Anderson later learned that his uncle and fellow fisherman fell off of a ladder on a dock when he was beset by a heart attack. Mavar was 59 years old. 2 days after Mavar's death, Anderson posted a poem of praise called Measure of the Man to his Facebook page, dedicated to his Uncle Nicky. But that wasn't the first family tragedy in Anderson's life. Out at sea and hundreds of miles away from his hometown of Anacortes, Anderson learned in the Season 5 Deadliest Catch episode, Bitter Tears, that his older sister, Chelsea Anderson, had been rushed to a medical facility and shortly thereafter died from issues related to pneumonia. Chelsea's death in February 2009 capped a life characterized by chronic illness. Around the age of 2, she was diagnosed with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, a condition that can lead to pain in the joints, slowed growth, and inflammation.
She was hurt real bad her whole life.
On the anniversary of his sister's death in 2020, Anderson divulged the details of the tragic event. He wrote on Facebook, "Before my sister died at the doctor's office, she was arguing with my mom about how she didn't need to go. She was fine. She died 20 minutes later while my mom was in the waiting room." Chelsea Anderson had lost many of her physical facilities by her mid-30s, at which point she developed seizures and abscesses, then became addicted to prescription pain medications and was diagnosed with schizophrenia. She was 37 years old when she died, but she wasn't Anderson's only family member to suffer a tragic fate. A year later, Anderson's family was rocked by a mystery that, once resolved, still didn't offer up many answers. In January 2010, his father, Keith Anderson, left his home in Anacortes, intending to meet an unnamed friend in the town of Arlington, about 40 miles away. The elder Anderson, who departed with only a little cash and was reportedly dealing with depression, never returned. Weeks later, his truck was discovered and identified by authorities on a logging road in rural Skagit County, Washington. Little trace of him remained in the vehicle. More than 2 years later, a hiker came across skeletal remains less than a few miles from where Keith Anderson had abandoned his truck. Authorities identified the bones as belonging to him. That closure of sorts came for Jake Anderson days before an episode of Deadliest Catch aired, which showed the fisherman coping with grief and lingering questions as he surveyed the area where his father's truck had been discovered. Keith Anderson died at the age of 62.
Was he happy when he was here?
He was really happy, like he was satisfied.
Deadliest Catch star Captain Phil Harris of the Cornelia Marie suffered a stroke that happened off camera. As the U.S. Sun reports, he died at the age of 53 after several days in the hospital. Harris's stroke kicked off a run of episodes that focused on his health and the reactions of those who knew him. The first of these episodes garnered 5.4 million views according to the New York Times. Harris was placed in an induced coma and later woke up following surgery. Sometime after this, however, he died from an intracranial hemorrhage. The July 13th episode, Redemption Day, showed Harris during his final days. The subsequent episode, Valhalla, dealt with the aftermath of his death. These episodes were followed up with an hour-long tribute episode titled Captain Phil Harris Remembered. Clark Bunting, president and general manager of Discovery, told the New York Times, "Most of the fans know what the unfortunate ending is. I think this is a collective opportunity for people to express their condolences." While fans of Deadliest Catch could never have foreseen that Phil Harris would suffer a stroke and die as Season 6 was filming, people reported that he suffered from poor health and lifestyle choices for years. He wore his body down over time through smoking, high-calorie meals, pots of coffee, cases of Red Bull, and more. He suffered a pulmonary embolism in 2008, a life-threatening blood clot in the lung. After that, a Deadliest Catch producer close to Harris observed that he seemed to get weaker as time went on. On top of all this, Phil's son, Josh Harris, also said that his father had herniated discs that left him in severe pain on his final trip out at sea. As people reported, it was the Cornelia Marie's engineer, Steve Ward, who found Captain Harris immobilized on the floor of his cabin. Josh Harris reported that the left side of Phil's face, as well as both of his arms, were paralyzed. And yet, as Pop Matters wrote, even in this debilitated condition, Captain Harris told the Deadliest Catch production crew to continue filming. The Discovery Channel filmed everything as it was happening and built the rest of Season 6 around Harris's failing condition. He was transported to a hospital in Anchorage, underwent surgery, and seemed to take a turn for the better, but he ultimately died.
I don't know how to tell you this, Jake, but we lost Dad, dude.
As Deadliest Catch footage shows, Phil Harris and his elder son Josh butted heads, challenged each other for dominance, and played pranks on each other. But when push came to shove, the two came together. In a 2010 People article, Josh Harris describes being grateful for the time that he and his father had while he was in the hospital in Anchorage, saying, "We had 9 days total that we were there to enjoy a few moments with him. We had our closest people there, and it was awesome. On that same note, Captain Harris's closest friend Dan Mittman spoke positively about the upturn that Harris displayed following his surgery. He explained that, regardless of the tragic outcome, him being awake and aware long enough to be able to say goodbye to those closest to him was a miracle in itself. People describes how Harris more or less passed the professional baton to his children. His son, Josh, said, "My life goal was to show him I could be a man, and I could fish, and I did the best job that I could. And he recognized that as being a good job and gave me kudos." Harris's younger son, Jake, said, "I'm going to be looking at that captain's chair in a different way. I just didn't expect this to happen so soon. That's definitely something where I would take over and take the responsibility."
The 2020 loss of Mahlon Reyes has some fans wondering if the show is cursed. As Catch fans know, Reyes worked as a deckhand on the boats Seabrook and Cape Caution, appearing in 14 episodes of the Discovery Channel show plus a number of specials. In a statement, a representative from the Discovery Channel confirmed Reyes died in his hometown of Whitefish, Montana, from what was originally reported to be a heart attack. Though he initially survived the heart attack, Reyes never regained consciousness, and as a result, it was decided the deckhand would be taken off of life support. A short time later, Reyes died surrounded by his friends and family. He was just 38 years old. According to TMZ, at the time that Reyes died, he was recovering at home with a recently torn Achilles tendon, an injury sustained while crabbing on the boat.
You can see where something down here is up.
He reportedly was very focused on rehabbing the injury, doing everything he could to be ready for the next season. Sadly, it wasn't meant to be, as his life was cut short by an unexpected danger: cocaine. Yes, according to USA Today, it was soon revealed that the ultimate cause of death was an accidental cocaine overdose. Though Mahlon Reyes did have a heart attack leading to his hospitalization, removal from life support, and eventual death, a Flathead County Sheriff's Office report later explained that autopsy and toxicology results indicated the heart failure was a result of an overdose. No foul play was suspected. According to WebMD, chronic cocaine use can lead to a number of health conditions that tax the cardiovascular system and increase the risk of heart attack and death. In a memorial posted on Facebook, the Reyes family wrote that Mahlon spent too much time without oxygen, which caused the irreversible brain damage. On Sunday night, our family together made the hardest choice we've ever made, and that was to remove him from life support. Mahlon's body was tired and had put up an amazing fight. He was the strongest guy we knew. He was surrounded by so much love. Reyes' death shocked friends, family, and fans of the Deadliest Catch around the world, as there was no known pre-existing conditions that could contribute to a fatal heart issue in someone so young. In an email, his wife Heather Sullivan said those who knew him were mourning the sudden loss. "I am in awe of the people that he touched just by his positive attitude and smile. Reyes was my rock, and I was his." And in the aftermath of the reality TV star's death, the Discovery Channel issued a statement that read in part, "So sad. He was so young. Our thoughts and prayers to his family." Sadly, Reyes died only a short time before another Deadliest Catch star, Nick McGlashan. According to the U.S. Sun, Reyes' friend also died from a drug overdose, as McGlashan reportedly had meth, cocaine, and fentanyl in his system when he died. Sadly, according to Saltwire, substance abuse issues are an ongoing challenge in the fishing industry, where the workplace death rate among fishermen is notably higher than most other industries. Reyes was cremated, and his ashes were scattered in two places that his wife Heather Sullivan said were very dear to his heart: the Bering Sea and Montana's Swan Range Mountains, where Reyes and his brother would often spend time together. Reyes was survived by his wife and 4 children. After Reyes' death was announced, Sullivan posted on Facebook, "Reyes touched so many lives, and he is up there smiling and watching over my protector from the sky."
Once considered one of Deadliest Catch's rising stars, the sudden passing of Blake Painter was more tragic than you might have guessed. The commercial crabbing ship, the FV Maverick, was part of the Discovery reality television series Deadliest Catch through seasons 1, 2, and 3, with Blake Painter first appearing in season 1 as a Maverick deckhand. According to Rico Intensive, Painter was a second-generation fisherman who began working in the industry when he was 19 years old. After becoming the Maverick's deck boss in Season 2, he was named captain in Season 3, with his last appearance on the show being in 2007.
Oh, look at that. That's a tank full of money right there.
According to Variety, by early 2008, Painter had bought his own fishing boat, the FV Tradition, and was actively serving as its skipper. But when he was off the water, Painter would receive a public DUI arrest in 2013 and survive a life-threatening car wreck in 2016. In 2018, according to the Daily Historian, he was charged with several offenses, including driving under the influence and unlawful possession of heroin. During this more recent DUI incident, a patrol officer claimed that he spotted Painter smoking heroin while driving, and once he was stopped, visibly attempted to hide the evidence. Only a few months after his arrest, a friend went to Painter's home in Astoria, Oregon to check on his well-being and made a grim discovery. The 38-year-old Painter was reportedly seen through the window, laying on his side on the floor of his living room. It was later determined that Painter had been dead for some time by the time he was discovered, with the police officer telling TMZ that the odor of decaying flesh could be smelled inside the house, and large portions of Painter's body had already turned blue. Drugs and drug paraphernalia were reportedly found at the scene, including the painkiller tramadol, a container reportedly filled with heroin and meth, a mix of pills and medication, 2 pipes, and tinfoil. While no foul play was suspected, Painter's toxicology report was never revealed to the public, with his untimely death underscoring the dangerous and taxing nature of the king crabbing industry operating in the Bering Sea. Painter explained the appeal of one of the world's most dangerous professions to Seattle Weekly in 2013, claiming, "When fishing is good, you're making money quick. It's not uncommon to make $1,000 a day. But the heavy toll of the work can also lead to an array of health problems, leading many fishermen to deal with substance use issues." According to the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health, opioid use is common for pain management for a variety of different ailments. Painter explained to Seattle Weekly that his many years as a fisherman, before, during, and after his time on Deadliest Catch, led to a condition called the claw. This occurs when your hands involuntarily clench shut, and intense pain radiates up the length of your arms. But this is only one of the harrowing injuries Painter outlined, claiming that he'd required several surgeries for carpal tunnel syndrome and that his shoulder and back were also faring poorly due to years of the grueling labor.
I don't want to be a pessimist, but it's not looking too good right now.
As news of Painter's 2018 death spread, fellow Deadliest Catch Captain Keith Colburn tweeted, "My sincerest condolences to Captain Blake's family, friends, crew, and all who loved him. Fair winds and following seas, Captain. Rest easy. We have the watch." Nick McGlashan, fellow Deadliest Catch cast member and FV Summer Bay deckhand, also tweeted, "A fellow fisherman has lost his life due to an overdose. Prayers to his family, please." This would become eerily prophetic, as McGlashan would pass away in 2020 at the age of 33 due to his own ongoing struggles with substance use.